if you get to be the MUFON investigator who captured Mothman or whatever. Like nobody's going to risk their personal life just on the off chance that they can help some stranger sell a story or something. That's anybody who
Tobias?
loses sight of.
Yeah, we got to go.
Yep.
We got to go on break. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes. So, we'll talk more after the break. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio with our guest Tobias Wayland.
Do you have a paranormal story you want to share on Night Dreams Talk Radio? You could be a guest. Email us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
Night Dreams Talk Radio, After Dark, wants to give a big shout out to all the truckers that listen to our show.
And don't forget, in November, we're going to be going to a 4-hour show starting November 15th. So we're going to have 2 guests on each night. We're going to have the round table. We're going to have the wacky news. Even Tobias Wayland will be coming on once a week, giving us updates and cryptics. Now, Tobias, are you still there?
I sure am, Gary.
Yeah. Now, are you all excited about Halloween coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually funny. I was talking to Lon about this just earlier today, and for paranormal investigators, Halloween, it's still fun, and I liked it a lot when I was a kid. But honestly, I'm more of a winter holiday guy now, just because. I do creepy stuff all year. Just everything, all the time. Like it's all creepy. I like the winter holidays because they're a little happier. It's more lighthearted. I feel like I can have more fun. But Halloween it's still great. I absolutely I think Halloween is nice because. What I always like to say about it, if you're doing Halloween right, October becomes the time of year when people stop laughing at ghost stories and start telling them. It should be a time of year when all of us weirdos who are working the rest of the year as paranormal investigators, and when we can talk openly about what we do, and people are interested because they want to be scared, like they want to sort of tap into this element of the supernatural that they kind of just reserve for this time of year. So in that respect, I think Halloween is great. You can let your Fortean freak flag fly, and without judgment, and just be into all of the weird, creepy, paranormal stuff that you're generally into, and people think is super strange the rest of the year. So, wait. Now, do you do anything for Halloween, Gary?
No, but where we're at, I maybe see one trick-or-treater every couple years. We're on a mini farm. You have to, come off of a road and then go in, 1,000 feet. I'm surrounded all by cedar trees. But I'll tell you what I did. I had the Halloween spirit. Now, James, I think you might know where I'm going here.
I know where you're going.
Couldn't resist. Home Depot had all these scary creatures for Halloween, like life size. And I got this one, that is a, what do you call it? It's skeleton, with a sword, with a costume of being a knight, for example. My wife didn't see it, and it is kind of creepy looking, I have to admit. It's actually 7 feet tall. I decided the other night, as a practical joke, I waited till my wife was in bed snoring like normal, and I quietly, me and one of my sons, we dragged it into the bedroom, set it over next to the bed with this arm and sword, right above her. She didn't think it was funny when she woke up at 4:30 in the morning. The alarm went off. She was not all the way awake, and she sees this, skeleton with a sword. And I can tell you, I know what a banshee sounds like because my wife imitated one so closely.
Oh, you're bad.
You are a brave man because you're taking your life in your hands when you do stuff like that. I'm sure, because if I did that to Emily, she would not enjoy it.
My wife was just barely talking to me, and that's like from 2 days ago. But I have to admit, it was funny as you know what. Because could you imagine waking up from a dead sleep? You're not all the way awake, and all of a sudden you see a skeleton with a sword, right over your head. What would you think?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I will cross. I'll just cross that bridge if and when I ever come to it. Interestingly enough, actually, I have some experience with waking up to weird stuff. And so I guess that's as good of a segue as any. I'd actually pulled, because of Halloween coming up, I pulled some of my personal, creepy stories, and then just some of the ghosts and paranormal stuff we've covered for the Singular Fortean Society. But one of the really strange things that happened to me was when, and again, this is a personal, paranormal experience that I had that really happened to me. I was in my early 20s. I was 21, and I was living at home briefly before I moved back into Madison to go back to school. And now this is after, basically a lifetime up to that point of weird stuff happening to me. So, people need to understand, to put it in perspective, that I was used to a certain amount of seemingly, frightening, weird stuff happening to me on a relatively frequent basis. And so I had gone to bed normally, and I woke up one night, and now this is in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. So it's especially at that time, it was a relatively quiet suburb. It's grown quite a bit since then, but this was almost 20 years ago. And I wake up, and I'm just very suddenly aware that I'm awake, and I look around my room, and there's this ambient light, from the suburbs, because it's never really completely dark there. And so I can make out all the outlines of everything inside of my room, So I look over, like, my dresser's where it's supposed to be. There's my bookshelves, and I see, standing next to me as I look to my left, there is this black figure, a humanoid figure, like looks like, just the outline of a human man, really. But I couldn't make out any features. It's just completely black. And I'm about chest high on this thing because, interestingly enough, I notice at that point that I seem to be floating, a couple of feet off of my bed, and I don't have the covers or anything on me. Like, that's all off. And so I look over, and I have this distinct feeling like I'm not supposed to be awake for this, because how can it possibly be anybody's intention that I be, conscious for whatever is going on here? It really felt like I was interrupting something. And so I look over at this thing, who or whatever it was, and it reaches its hand out, and it's so crazy. I can remember this to this day. I can still feel it, frankly. It reaches its hand out and places it on my chest, like almost comfortingly, right? And at that point, like, I'm lowered back down to my bed, and it just disappears. Like, it just vanishes. And so I just lie there, because, what do you do in that situation? Just to, I guess, explain my reaction to people, because the most common reaction that's expected when I tell this story to people is always like, oh, I'd be freaking out, I'd be doing this or doing that. And I'm like, look, up to this point in my life, I had I don't know how many of these experiences, not that specifically, but, different things that had generally been frightening or unsettling, at least in certain varying degrees. And while my parents now, we can talk openly about this stuff, and they show interest in what I do and stuff. But back then, they didn't believe it. Like, when I was a kid and everything, like, they didn't think that what was, like, they thought, like most parents do, that a lot of it was probably like childhood imagination or something. And so I had sort of been conditioned up to that point to not bother waking them up, because what are they going to do about it? And so I just sort of lied there, and I wasn't hurt, and I wasn't even particularly scared, frankly, because, nothing bad had happened to me, and I had sort of made my peace with that kind of high strangeness, to the point that, it wasn't, it was no longer existentially terrifying to me. Like, I sort of accepted the fact that there are things in this world, in this universe, other realities that intersect with ours, and we bump into them sometimes, and we can't really explain them or understand them yet, but they're there, and you can't live your life in fear of it. And so I literally just lied there, and I was like, okay, that was weird, but I'm okay, and it's over. And so I thought about it for a while, and sort of thought about what it could mean, and I didn't know, because depending on whom you're talking to, people would describe that as anything from, a shadow person to an alien abduction. So, who knows? And, I lied there and thought about it for a while, and then I just went back to sleep. And it was funny, the next morning I woke up, and I was like, wow, did that really happen? And I realized when I woke up